Hey there, and welcome to Tales by June, where hearts break, heal, and sometimes seek revenge. Let's begin today's story.
Hey, before we begin, let me know where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more. I will never forget the sound. It wasn't just a sound, it was a knife. A laugh, soft and low, floating through the hallway of my home like a ghost I never invited. At first, I thought I was imagining things. Maybe the television was left on, or maybe my husband, Ethan, had fallen asleep watching one of his late night shows. But then I heard it again. A woman's giggle. High, breathy, intimate. My stomach sank. I froze in the kitchen doorway, clutching the grocery bag still in my hand. I had run out for milk and bread, nothing special, nothing dramatic, but somehow I had returned to a scene that would end everything I thought I knew about my life. The house smelled faintly of wine. Candles flickered somewhere upstairs, their glow spilling faint orange shadows across the hallway wall. My house, my sanctuary, felt suddenly foreign. I set the bag down as quietly as I could, though the milk jug thudded against the floor harder than I wanted it to. Nobody noticed. My feet carried me up the staircase even as my mind screamed to turn back. I already knew what I would find, didn't I? But some stubborn, desperate part of me clung to denial. Maybe it's not what it sounds like. Maybe Ethan's just watching something with the volume too high. Maybe a neighbor came over. Maybe. The bedroom door was half open, and the candlelight poured out, warm and golden, almost romantic. I heard her voice before I saw her. Ethan, stop. Someone might come. And his answer, low and husky, no one's coming. It's just us tonight. The laugh that followed was hers. My half-sister, Lily. I pushed the door open. The sight hit me like a car crash I couldn't walk away from. Ethan's bare skin gleamed under the candlelight. Lily was beneath him, her long brown hair spread across my pillows. Her hand clutched his back like he was hers to hold. Both their heads whipped toward me at the same time, faces twisted in shock that melted into guilt far too slowly. Claire! Ethan's voice broke as he scrambled for the sheet. Wait, this isn't. But the words choked in his throat. What excuse could possibly erase what I had just seen? Lily gasped, clutching the blanket to her chest as though she was the victim here. Claire, please, listen. It's not what you think. Not what I think. I laughed. The sound was ugly, bitter. Really? Because what I think is that my husband and my half-sister are screwing each other in my bed. The silence that followed was suffocating. I could hear the faint crackle of candle wax, the pounding of my own heartbeat in my ears. Ethan reached for me, desperate. I made a mistake. A horrible mistake. Please, don't do this. Don't give up on us. Us? The word burned my throat. There is no us anymore. I didn't wait for their stammered excuses or crocodile tears. I turned, walked downstairs, and left them tangled in their shame. The next morning, I woke up at my parents' house. I hadn't planned it. I had just driven there after leaving, my hands numb on the wheel, tears blinding me until I barely knew how I made it. My mother greeted me with worry at first, her arms wrapping tight around me as if I were still her little girl. But everything changed when I told them what happened. The living room grew quiet. Too quiet. My father cleared his throat, avoiding my eyes. Claire, your sister made a mistake. Ethan too. But families survive mistakes. I stared at him. You're asking me to forgive them? My mother's eyes were already glassy. Sweetheart, please. For the sake of peace, for the family. The family. My voice cracked. What about me? Do I not matter? Of course you matter, she rushed to say. But sometimes we have to let go of things. Keep the family together no matter what. Their words settled in my chest like poison. They weren't protecting me. They weren't standing by me. They wanted me to swallow betrayal, to bury it, to pretend it never happened, all for their comfort. Something inside me broke that day. I looked at them, my parents who I had trusted all my life, and I realized I was standing alone. That was the day I stopped being their daughter. That was the day I stopped being Ethan's wife. That was the day I stopped being Lily's sister. That was the day I became something else entirely. Their worst mistake. Because if they thought I would forgive, forget, and smile through my humiliation just to keep the peace, they didn't know me at all. I left the house without another word. As I drove away, the sky stretched out before me, heavy with storm clouds. I felt the ache of betrayal burn hotter than fire in my chest. But beneath it, beneath the grief and rage, something else stirred. A plan. If they thought they could destroy me and walk away untouched, they had no idea what storm they had unleashed. That night, alone in a cheap motel room with peeling wallpaper and buzzing fluorescent lights, I stared at my reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror. My eyes were red, swollen from crying, but there was something new in them. Resolve. "Claire," I whispered to my reflection, "this is the end of who you were. Tomorrow, you begin again." And in that moment, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I would never forgive. I would never forget. And I would never let them win. I wasn't born into a perfect family, though for a long time I tried to believe I had one. My earliest memories are of my mother, my real mother, singing softly while braiding my hair by the window of our small house. She had the kind of voice that could calm a storm. But storms don't stay quiet forever. I was only 8 when cancer stole her away. One day she was tucking me into bed, telling me stories about princesses who survived dragons. The next, she was gone. My father remarried just 2 years later. I remember sitting in a scratchy dress at their wedding, staring at the woman who was about to replace my mother. Her name was Cynthia. She was beautiful in a cold, polished way, always perfectly dressed, nails sharp as her words. And with her came Lily, her daughter from a previous marriage. Lily and I were the same age, but we were never the same kind of girl. I was quiet, bookish, happiest with a notebook in hand. She was loud, charming, always at the center of attention. My father adored her. Cynthia encouraged it. Slowly, I felt myself pushed to the side in my own home. I'd come home from school, excited to show my dad a drawing I'd worked on, only to find him clapping proudly as Lily showed off her dance routine. If I tried to join, Cynthia's eyes would flick toward me like I was an intruder. "Not now, Claire. Let Lily finish." It didn't take long for me to learn my place. I was the shadow. Lily was the star. By the time we were teenagers, the rivalry was silent but sharp. She always had the prettier clothes, the latest phone, the spotlight at family dinners. When we fought, as sisters always do, Cynthia defended her without fail, while my father begged me to just be the bigger person. It was easier for them if I was invisible. And maybe I would have stayed invisible, if not for Ethan. I met him in college. He was the boy with the easy smile and the kind of charm that could fill a room. I was sitting under an oak tree, sketching between classes, when he stopped and asked, "Mind if I sit here?" I expected him to move on once he realized I wasn't the type to flirt back. But he didn't. He kept showing up, bringing me coffee, making me laugh, asking questions about my drawings like they mattered. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen. He wasn't perfect, but he was attentive in the way I had craved all my life. He made me believe that maybe love could be different, that maybe someone could choose me, not Lily, not anyone else. We dated for 2 years before he proposed. It wasn't some grand gesture, just the two of us in the apartment we shared, candles flickering, his voice shaking as he asked me to be his wife. I said yes with tears in my eyes. Our wedding day should have been the happiest of my life. But even then, the cracks showed. Lily was my maid of honor. My choice, or more accurately, my father's insistence. He wanted the girls to get along. She wore her dress a little too tight, her smile a little too wide, and I remember watching her laugh with Ethan during the reception. It was harmless then, or so I told myself. She was family. He was my husband. There was nothing to fear. For years, I believed in that marriage. Believed in Ethan's promises. We built a home together. We dreamed of children we never had, thanks to timing, money, excuses. I stood by him when he lost his job, cheered for him when he found another. I gave everything I had to the life we were building. And yet, somewhere in the back of my mind, I always carried that little girl's fear, that I would never be enough. When Ethan started working late, I ignored the whispers of doubt. When he seemed distant, distracted, I blamed myself for being boring, tired, too focused on work. I never imagined that the woman he turned to wasn't a stranger, but the very person I had spent my life being compared to. Looking back, the signs were there. The glances at family dinners. The laughter that lasted too long. The way Lily would touch his arm as though it was natural. I told myself it was in my head. I told myself family would never betray me like that. But I was wrong. I see now that the seeds of betrayal were planted long before Ethan and Lily crossed that final line. They were planted in the childhood where I was always second best, in the family where peace mattered more than truth, in the silence I was forced to swallow year after year. Maybe it was fate, maybe it was inevitability. But when I walked in on them that night, when I saw Ethan and Lily in my bed, it wasn't just a betrayal of love. It was the confirmation of every fear I'd ever carried. I was the shadow again. The afterthought. The girl who never mattered enough. Only this time, I wasn't going to fade quietly. This time, the shadow would rise. The morning after I left my parents' house, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Missed calls, texts, voicemails, all from Ethan. Each message was a variation of the same song. Please, it was a mistake. Claire, don't throw everything away. You don't understand. Didn't I? I had walked in. I had seen them. No amount of begging could erase that image burned into my mind. By noon, it wasn't just Ethan. It was Lily, too. Her number popped up on my screen over and over until I finally gave in and answered, more out of exhaustion than anything else. Claire, thank God, she blurted the second I picked up. Her voice was high, trembling rashly, like she was the one who had been wronged. Please, just let me explain. I let the silence hang. She rushed on. It wasn't serious. It was stupid one night. I swear it didn't mean anything. I laughed bitterly. One night? You expect me to believe that was the first time? She went quiet. Too quiet. And that was my answer. I hung up. That evening, my parents called a family meeting. The phrase itself felt childish, like we were about to sit around the table and talk about chores instead of betrayal. But part of me went, hoping, just hoping, that maybe they'd stand by me this time. When I arrived, Ethan was already there. He stood up the second I walked in, his eyes red, his hair a mess. He looked like he hadn't slept. Good. Claire, please. He took a step toward me. I stepped back. Don't. The living room felt smaller than ever. My father sat stiff in his chair, his jaw tight. My stepmother, Cynthia, had her arm around Lily, who sat with her head bowed like a penitent child. I scanned their faces and realized I was outnumbered before the conversation even began. My father spoke first. Claire, what happened was wrong. We all agree on that. But it doesn't have to destroy everything. I stared at him. It already did. Sweetheart, my mother, Cynthia, chimed in, her voice syrupy. Lily is sorry. Ethan is sorry. We're all human. Mistakes happen. Mistakes? My voice cracked. Sleeping with my husband isn't spilling a glass of milk, Cynthia. It's betrayal. Lily finally lifted her head, her eyes glassy. I didn't mean to hurt you, Claire. I don't know what happened. We got close. One thing led to another. Her words stabbed deep. One thing led to another, as if my marriage was just a casual accident, as if vows could be brushed aside like lint on a sleeve. Ethan rubbed his face, his voice hoarse. I love you, Claire. I swear I do. I don't know what came over me. It meant nothing. She means nothing compared to you. The gall of him. To sit there and call my sister nothing after taking her to my bed. I shook my head slowly, tasting the bitterness on my tongue. Do you even hear yourselves? You all talk about this like it's some little slip-up, like it can be forgiven if we just hug it out. Do you realize you've burned my entire life down? Silence. Then my father sighed, heavy and disappointed. Claire, holding on to anger won't fix anything. You need to let go. Forgive them. Keep the peace. Keep the peace. There it was again. Those 3 words like a hammer driving nails into my coffin. I looked around the room. At Ethan's pleading eyes, at Lily's crocodile tears, at Cynthia's tight-lipped sympathy, at my father's impatience, and something inside me hardened. They weren't going to give me justice. They weren't going to give me loyalty. So I would take something else. Fine, I said finally, my voice cold as stone. You want peace? You'll have it. Their faces eased, relief spreading across them like they had won. But inside, I smiled, because they had no idea what kind of peace I was about to bring them. That night, Ethan showed up at the motel where I was staying. He stood outside the door, knocking softly, begging me to let him in. Claire, just talk to me, please. I'll do anything. Therapy, counseling, whatever you want. Just don't give up on us. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I opened the door just enough to look him in the eye. You should go home, Ethan. I need space. Space? His voice cracked. Claire, I can't lose you. I gave him a smile so thin it could cut glass. Maybe you already have. and then I closed the door. As I leaned against it, my heart pounding, I knew I wasn't lying. He had lost me, but he didn't know yet what else he was going to lose. That week blurred by in a haze of whispers and forced smiles. My family acted as though nothing had happened. Cynthia hosted her usual Sunday dinner, where Lily sat across the table, eyes lowered, playing the role of the remorseful sister. Ethan came too, still my husband on paper, still desperate to prove himself. Everyone wanted me to sit there, to eat the roast chicken, to laugh at the small talk, to pretend like my life wasn't in ruins. So I did. I sat quietly. I smiled when spoken to. I let them believe I was calming down, that I was listening to their advice, that I was the dutiful daughter and wife they wanted me to be. But inside, I was planning. Because if there was one thing my family had taught me, it was how to live in the shadows, how to let people underestimate me, how to wait until the right moment to step into the light. And when that moment came, none of them would see it coming. Revenge is not lightning. It is slow rain that soaks the foundation until the house cracks. I did not want a scene. I did not want a public meltdown that would become fodder for gossip and then disappear. I wanted something cleaner, crueler, precise, something that would make them understand, in the very marrow of their bones, that choosing shame as a secret had consequences. The first thing I did was breathe. I let the outrage cool into a plan. I slept in a different motel every night. I let Ethan call. I let Lily send messages that said, "I'm sorry, and please come back." Each one I saved. Every slip of their guilt I cataloged like evidence. I did not answer. Not yet. I got a job again. A small consultancy contract at a boutique design firm, work I could do from a laptop in a quiet cafe. It gave me money and, more importantly, a place people could not find me easily. I kept my apartment and file cabinets. I paid the mortgage on time. I dressed the part of the woman who was being reasonable, the woman who was moving on. They watched me like hawks. They thought my silence was my surrender. At night, I mapped them. I put their routines on paper. Ethan's gym at 6, his lunch at the same bistro on Tuesdays, his volunteer work on Saturdays, Lily's yoga classes, her brunches with friends, Cynthia's Pilates twice a week. My father's golf on Fridays. Little things. Patterns. Opportunities. Information is a slow-burning weapon. So is patience. I started small, a missing pair of cufflinks here, found later beneath the couch. A bill paid for the cable package Ethan said he had canceled. I made no accusations. I let them assume they had misremembered. I smiled when they looked at me, an expression that said nothing and knew everything. Then I began to pick at the threads. At Ethan's office, I learned the names of his clients. I joined a professional networking group he frequented. I sent him a LinkedIn request he accepted without a second thought. He still thought we were bound by easy familiarity. That was his first mistake. I also reconnected with an old friend, Mark, who worked in digital forensics. He owed me one favor from college, the kind you trade for a favor back then and forget until you need it. I met him in a diner that smelled of coffee and fryer oil and told him, quietly, what I needed. He raised an eyebrow and said, "You're not asking for drama, Claire. You want evidence." Yes. I folded my hands and felt the old quiet hunger settle into my bones. I want proof. I want them to feel what I felt. He smiled, small and sharp. We can do that. There is a satisfaction in watching someone underestimate you. I used it. I let Lily text from the family iPad, assuming it was private. I let Ethan leave his phone face up while he took the trash out. I didn't hack. I didn't break into anything I legally couldn't. But I did collect what was freely given. Photographs, messages, small video clips saved on cloud accounts I could access because of lax passwords and too comfortable people. Every discovery lit another piece of the map. There were dinners I hadn't known about, coffee meetings, a photo of Ethan and Lily at a charity gala months earlier, arms around each other, laughing as if they knew the secret they were keeping. I printed them all. I labeled them. I put them into a folder with the neat, clinical title, For Family Records. I wanted them to see the pattern laid out like a conspiracy. I wanted to show them the truth in a format they could not dismiss as an angry woman's rage. Evidence, I learned, is a language they had to respect. Then I began the quiet work of reputation. Cynthia loved the neighborhood book club. She sat on the board of the local historical society. She took pride in being seen as a pillar of the community. Lily volunteered at the animal shelter and loved to post glossy photos of herself with puppies. Ethan taught a night class at the community college. All anchors, all things to loosen. My first move was at Cynthia's fundraiser. I arrived unannounced, in a dress that said, "I am fine, and watch me." I smiled while she hugged other donors. I listened to her brag about her impeccable taste in charity committees. I complimented her speech, then asked quietly and conversationally about her account details for the event. "Just logistics," I said. She gave them, smiling. A few days later, a letter from the charity claimed an accounting discrepancy. Cynthia spent weeks scrambling, explaining, making small, panicked calls to donors. Her aura of control frayed. Next, I turned to Lily. She loved attention. She needed it. I slipped an anonymous message to the shelter coordinator. "There's been a complaint." It took months to unravel as they investigated petty theft of supplies. Merchandise Lily had once held in her arms for an Instagram post. She cried. She begged. The shelter volunteers whispered. Her glossy Insta persona developed static. Ethan felt the pressure in his professional life. I sent a careful tip anonymously to the college administration about an inappropriate relationship complaint. The rumor mill does the rest. It doesn't matter if complaints are unfounded. Suspicion stains. He defended himself. He pleaded. He fought. Every time he flinched, I tightened the net. But revenge is also artful mercy. I never destroyed more than a reputation could rebuild. I knew what it was to be pushed to the margins. I would not cast them into ruin. Not yet. I wanted them to encounter the edges of loss, to feel the ground slip, so they would remember the taste. They began to panic. The family dinners grew thinner. Cynthia's smile was brittle. Lily stopped coming around as much. Ethan tried to act normal, but his jokes landed wrong, and he checked his phone too often. They came to me seeking explanations. "Who's doing this?" they asked, faces pale in the kitchen light. I poured tea for them and said, "Perhaps karma has a slow way of balancing things out." They looked at me like I was jesting. They did not see the calm, methodical look behind my eyes. They did not see the folder I kept locked in my desk, photographs, timestamps, emails. They did not see that I had already planned the crescendo. Because revenge is not a single act. It is a series of small truths that build the sound of thunder, and I wanted them to hear the whole storm. The dining room was full. Extended family, cousins I hadn't seen in years, my father's brothers and their wives, Cynthia's social friends, even a few of Ethan's coworkers invited to make the family look close. They thought it was another happy gathering, another celebration of unity. But unity was long dead. I had chosen this night carefully. Too many eyes, too many ears, too many people who would spread whispers like wildfire. Tonight, the truth would not just crack their facade, it would burn it to ash. The meal went as expected. Polite conversation, bragging about children's colleges. Lily basking in attention, Ethan smiling like a proud husband sitting next to me, pretending nothing had happened. I waited until dessert. The plates were cleared, the coffee poured. The mood was comfortable, glowing with laughter. That was when I stood. "Before we finish tonight," I said, my voice steady, "I have something important to share with everyone here. Something about my marriage. And about this family." The room fell quiet. Every eye turned to me. Ethan froze. Lily's fork clattered against her plate. Cynthia's smile faltered. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. Thick, heavy, filled with the evidence I had gathered. Photos, screenshots, transcripts of calls, their sins printed in black and white. I flipped the folder open and began to read. "January 14th, I said. Text from Ethan to Lily, I can't stop thinking about you. Claire doesn't excite me the way you do." A ripple of gasps. Heads turned toward them. February 3rd, I continued, my voice louder now, filling the room. "Lily to Ethan, she's so naive. I almost laughed when she told me she loved you this morning." I looked up. My voice shook, but not from weakness, from fury barely contained. My husband, my half-sister, laughing at me, mocking my love, right here in these messages. I read more. Message after message. The intimacy of their words turned the air heavy with disgust. Cousins exchanged horrified glances. My uncle muttered a curse under his breath. Lily's face crumpled. "Stop it, Claire, please," she cried. "Why?" I snapped. "You weren't ashamed when you wrote them. Don't beg for dignity now." Ethan stood, his hands trembling. "This is private. You can't just..." "Private?" My laugh cut through him. You dragged me into this when you climbed into bed with her. You made me a fool in my own home. Now everyone will see who the fool really is. My father tried to stand, his voice booming. Enough, Claire. This is not the time or place. I turned on him, shaking with rage. You don't get to silence me. You told me to forgive them, to protect them, to keep the peace. What about me, Dad? Did I not matter? His mouth opened, then closed. He had no answer. Cynthia reached for Lily, shielding her like she had all our lives. She's your sister. Half-sister, I cut in, my tone sharp as glass. And don't you dare use family to excuse betrayal. You raised her to believe she could take whatever she wanted. Even my husband. Gasps echoed again. An aunt shook her head, muttering, Shameful. I pulled the last paper from my folder. Divorce papers. I walked to Ethan, who looked at me with wide, desperate eyes, his lips trembling as though he might beg again. Without a word, I threw them in his face. The papers slapped against his cheek before falling into his lap. There, I said coldly. You're free to crawl back into Lily's arms, but you'll never again call me your wife. Ethan's face crumpled, red with shame and fury. Claire, don't do this. Please, we can fix. You mocked me to her, I shouted, my voice cracking at last. You called me boring. You laughed at my love. Tell me, Ethan, how do you fix that? Silence. His mouth opened, then closed. He had no words. I turned to Lily, who was sobbing into her hands. And you, I said, my voice cutting through her tears. You were never my blood, but you were raised beside me. I tried to see you as a sister. I tried to believe we could be family, but I was always the shadow, wasn't I? You were the golden child, the one everyone doted on while I was left to the side. And still, even after all that, I gave you my trust. And you betrayed it. You took the one thing that was mine and mocked me for loving it. You proved what I always feared. There was never a place for me in this family, not even with you. She sobbed harder. Cynthia tried to comfort her, but I cut in again, voice rising. No, Cynthia, you don't get to coddle her. You raised a selfish, cruel woman, and now everyone sees it. Finally, I looked at my father. His face was pale, jaw clenched. And you, Dad, you failed me most of all. When you told me to keep the peace, what you really said was, your pain doesn't matter. You chose comfort over truth. You chose silence over me. And tonight, I choose to stop being your daughter. A stunned hush fell. No one dared move. I picked up my bag, straightened my shoulders, and declared, I am done. Done being a wife to a cheater, done being a sister to a traitor, done being a daughter to people who silenced me. Tonight is the last time you will ever see me at this table. And with that, I walked out. Behind me, voices erupted, family members shouting, arguing, demanding explanations. Ethan called after me. Lily wailed. Cynthia hissed for the cameras to be turned off. But she was too late. Because while I was reading those messages, while I was throwing truth like knives across the table, one of my younger cousins had been recording the entire thing on her phone, and within hours, the video was online. By morning, it had gone viral. Millions watched Ethan's face crumble as I read his words aloud. Millions saw Lily sobbing, begging for mercy she hadn't given me. Millions heard me renounce my family, throwing divorce papers at my husband and shaming them all in front of their peers. The internet did not forgive. Ethan's colleagues called for his resignation. Lily's so-called friends unfollowed her. Her charity board revoked her position. Cynthia was laughed at behind her back. Her perfect social circle shattered. My father, once a man respected in his community, was whispered about wherever he went, condemned for choosing silence over justice. The family name became a scandal, a cautionary tale, a meme. The house that once held their pride was now their prison. And me? I walked away. Not broken, not silenced, not ashamed. For the first time in years, I felt free. The truth had scorched everything behind me, but in its fire, I found myself reborn. And as the world watched their downfall, I didn't need to explain. The evidence, the recording, the shame, it all spoke louder than I ever could. They wanted me invisible. Instead, I became unforgettable. The video from that night never really disappeared. Even after the initial frenzy died down, it remained on the internet, reshared, re-uploaded, dissected on forums and gossip channels. My voice, steady and sharp, throwing the divorce papers in Ethan's face. Lily sobbing, Cynthia's mask cracking. My father looking small, powerless. That 15-minute clip became the symbol of betrayal and revenge. For weeks after the party, My phone didn't stop buzzing. Family calling, begging, demanding. "Claire, please," Cynthia had hissed over voicemail. "You've ruined us enough. Take the video down." "Claire, honey, don't throw away your family," my father's trembling voice pleaded one night. "We can work through this." And Ethan, he called every day. Sometimes angry, sometimes broken, sometimes whispering promises that felt like knives. "I'll change. It was a mistake. We belong together. Don't throw us away because of her." I ignored them all. The divorce moved forward swiftly. The evidence was ironclad. The judge's eyes had flickered with recognition when she saw Ethan and Lily's names. She'd clearly seen the viral video too. Ethan lost heavily. The house, assets, alimony. His lawyer tried to fight, but no argument could undo the humiliation of being exposed in front of millions. I walked out of court free, my head high, papers in hand. That day, I promised myself I would never again stay silent for the sake of peace. In the months that followed, the family unraveled. Ethan's career nosedived. The architecture firm he worked for dropped him. Too much scandal attached to his name. Former clients refused to meet with him. In business, reputation is everything, and his was poisoned. He scrambled, took odd jobs, but the air of shame clung to him like smoke. Lily fared no better. She tried to save face on social media, posting curated photos, captions about new beginnings. But the comments beneath each post were merciless. Homewrecker, the sister stealer. She couldn't scrub the internet clean. Eventually, she disappeared offline. Cynthia, once the queen of her social circle, found herself uninvited from luncheons, charity boards, and neighborhood committees. People smiled politely in public, but whispered behind her back, "That's the woman whose daughter stole her husband's son-in-law." Her obsession with appearances had collapsed into humiliation she couldn't control. And my father, he aged almost overnight. The shame of choosing silence, of being recorded as I cut ties with him, haunted him. He tried to reach out. Letters, emails, even showing up at my door once. But I never answered. To me, he was no longer my father. He was just a man who had chosen comfort over his daughter. But for me, life began again. I sold the old house, the one where Ethan had broken me. I moved into a sunlit apartment in the city, near the river. For the first time, I decorated a space exactly the way I wanted. Plants by the window, shelves filled with books, bright colors Ethan would have hated. I started writing. At first, just journaling to bleed out the pain, then essays, then a blog. To my surprise, women across the country found me, women who had been betrayed, silenced, shamed. They read my words, wrote back, thanked me for saying what they couldn't. My story, my voice, became theirs too. That's how I met Daniel. He was a reader, one of the first to message me, not with pity, not with empty comfort, but with respect. "Your strength is fire," he wrote. Not everyone could have walked through that and still stood tall. We met for coffee, then dinner, then long walks by the river. He was gentle where Ethan had been sharp, patient where Ethan had been demanding. He never made me feel like I had to earn his love. It was offered freely, without conditions. 2 years later, Daniel and I lived together. Not in a mansion, not in some polished suburban dream, but in a home filled with laughter, warmth, and trust. A home where I am seen, where I am loved, not mocked, where I am safe. And what of Ethan and Lily? They married a year after the divorce, a wedding no one wanted to attend. The pictures leaked online. Her dress too tight, his smile too strained. The comments were brutal. Who marries their sister's husband? Congratulations, cheater and cheatee. They tried to build a life, but shame is a heavy foundation. Ethan struggled to hold jobs. Lily, once doted on, now found doors closed everywhere. She resented him for his failures. He resented her for being the reminder of his downfall. Their love, born from betrayal, curdled into bitterness. I heard through whispers that they fight constantly, that Ethan drinks too much, that Lily cries at night, asking why no one respects her anymore. They made their bed. Now they lie in it. Cynthia still clings to them, defending them, insisting the world is cruel, not them. My father sits in silence, worn down, watching the empire of family he once tried to protect crumble into ruins. They are trapped in the shadow of the scandal. And I walk in the light. Sometimes I think back to that night at the party. The weight of the folder in my hands, the faces around the table, the sound of my own voice, steady and clear, finally refusing to be silenced. That moment defined everything. It burned the bridge behind me, yes. But it also lit the path ahead. I am no longer the daughter begging for approval, no longer the wife ignored, the sister overshadowed. I am Claire, a woman who chose truth over peace, a woman who lost a family built on lies and gained a life built on love, a woman who was betrayed and rose stronger than ever. 2 years later, on a quiet Sunday morning, Daniel and I sit by the river, coffee cups in hand. He looks at me the way Ethan never did, with admiration, not possession. "Do you ever regret it?" he asks softly. I smile, watching the sunlight shimmer on the water. "No. They were my worst mistake, and losing them was the best thing that ever happened to me." He takes my hand, warm and steady in mine, and for the first time in a long time, I know this is not the end of a story. It's the beginning of a beautiful new one. The end.